Got a ton to cover, so we'll dive right in. I first off am just overwhelmed with how many people registered for this event. This is our first Kardia webinar offering, and I couldn't be more excited to see the interest that everyone has had. And also, we know that this is a really busy time of the year, the holidays. So, just the fact that you took the time to register, you took the time to show up today, just amazing. We are overwhelmed, and we couldn't be more excited to hopefully bring some value to your day. So we've got a ton to cover. Um, I just want to say happy holidays from our Alive Core team. Our Alive Core team is who brings you Kardia and your Kardia subscriptions. So we're really grateful and we're just really excited to bring this offering to you. So let's dive in. So first off, our agenda, I just want to let you know that your time is very important. It's important to us that you showed up, so we want to make sure that we fill it with as much value as possible. Because I'm a coach, I'm really, really excited when we get into the tips and goal setting. So I want to make sure there's time for that. So we're going to cruise through this slide, moving in into introductions. I'll go first. I'm Ashley Triban, and I'm a board certified health and wellness coach, and then also a board certified lifestyle medicine professional. I've spent over a decade working with individuals to create healthy, lasting behavior change, and I can't tell you how rewarding it's been. Just like being here with you today, anytime I can spread the good word about a healthy lifestyle, I am game. At AliveCore, I partner with our services team and help them to create and promote healthy lifestyle offerings. Uh, and those are for our cardiac community across all of our products. And I'm really looking forward to, I added this on Dr. K, so I'm excited to hear yours too. But as far as what are we excited for this holiday season? I have a little 1.5-year-old daughter, and so I'm really excited this year to go walking around town and see the light displays. She is obsessed with the lights, and so it'll be really fun, and it'll also be a great excuse for me to get out and walk. So, Dr. K, we are really, really excited to have you today. And team, you're in for a treat. So, Dr. K, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everybody. It really is wonderful to see such a large turnout and the interest in this and other topics. My name is Chris Kozlowski. I'm an interventional cardiologist going way back into the previous century. In my job here at AliveCore, I am the medical director for a nationwide group of clinical cardiologists whose job is to oversee the thousands of EKGs that get done, to supervise the reading of those EKGs that either you request be overread by a physician or are overread in the course of your regular membership, and to run quality control on those, as well as to supervise the individual one-on-one cardiology visits with our members that are available to everybody.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dr. K. Okay, so first diving in on what is Holiday Heart?
Hey, Ashley, before you dive in, I just want to give a quick intro
Oh,
to
yes,
myself as
Katie,
well.
go for it.
Hi, everyone. I'm Katie. I will be acting as the moderator for today's session. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them into the Q&A section of the Zoom. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you should see a little like chat box with a question mark. If you tap that, that should open a Q&A and we can respond to those, either typing or asking. We received hundreds of questions during the sign up process of this session. So we'll do our best to try to get to some of them. We might not get to all of them, but just want to, again, thank you for your questions. And if you have any questions, feel free to post those in that Q&A section. All right, Ashley,
Yeah.
I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Katie. You know, sometimes, team, we forget that there's all of this housekeeping in the back that keeps us rolling through this, and Katie is holding this thing together. So thank you so much, Katie.
Yeah, and sorry, just a clarification, someone said the chat box is not open. That's correct. but the Q&A will be there. And so if you have any questions, just post them in there and I'm monitoring and receiving those. So thanks, Sean, for your comment.
Let's dive in, team. Okay, so Dr. K, we want to know, why is this important? Why are we here today? What is Holiday Heart and why do we care?
We're going to move through this material a bit quickly because the question and answers are always the best part. So bear with us. I hope we'll strike the right pace here. Holiday Heart is a term that started to get kicked around kind of in the 60s and 70s, and it represents the recognition that during the holidays, we're mostly talking about Christmas and Hanukkah and so forth, but during holiday seasons, there's clearly an uptick, or there's a greater incidence that people experience with their heart. Initially, it meant only atrial fibrillation, which is largely related to changes in alcohol consumption, but since then it has expanded really into all the cardiac symptoms and cardiac conditions that we observe an increase in during the holidays, all the way up to including heart attacks and strokes. So we'll be talking about that a little bit. It's been clear over the past decade or so that more bad stuff happens during the winter holidays. We see a clear spike around Christmas, and we know that this includes serious events like heart attacks and strokes, often after Christmas, for reasons that should make a little bit more sense as we talk about this a little bit. Keep in mind that Holiday Heart really refers mostly to an increase in atrial fibrillation, as we'll see, but there are other important aspects that fall under this term as well.
Thanks, Dr. K. And we'll talk about those other aspects right now. So first off, team, we want to know these different contributors to Holiday Heart. We want to know, and we're curious, which of these things might impact your holiday season or might already have impacted your holiday season. So to start this slide off, we've got a poll that Katie's going to bring up for us. You should see a question pop up on your screen, and you'll be able to answer it. And you can answer all that apply. So for example, I'm definitely going to have some family stress. I'm definitely going to have some large meals, and my routine is going to suffer. And the answers are coming in. And remember, you might have to scroll to see all those options.
They're coming in fast. That's wonderful.
Yeah, Dr. K, which of these you think are?
I think most of them apply. We're going to travel. The routine, I can handle, and meals seem to be the big ones that I can see right now. While those polls are coming in, and we'll look at the results a little bit later, we're seeing already though that there's positive answers in all the categories. And the point that we're trying to make is that all of these factors that you're answering right now really relate to stress, right? Some of it's psychological stress, mostly it's physical stress. And at the end of the day, people who are prone to Holiday Heart are kind of predisposed to it usually to begin with. And then these stresses on top of that predisposition kind of can be translated into Holiday Heart and can ruin the holiday and so forth. And that's what we're trying to prevent. So I'm going to go ahead and start talking about a couple of these, and let's just talk briefly about why these matter, and maybe some other stuff that maybe stressors doesn't seem to matter as much. The main trigger for developing atrial fibrillation, which I think most people know, is a rapid irregular beating of the heart, which can be serious and can be dangerous One of the main factors is alcohol use, and it really refers to alcohol use out of your normal routine, typically more than you would regular drink or faster than you would regular drink. So what is binge drinking, Ashley? What's our definition?
5 or more alcoholic drinks in one occasion.
Those are ballparks. Some people are very sensitive to alcohol. Some people are not, particularly with developing rhythm problems. But think about what alcohol does. Alcohol is initially a stimulant, and then it's a depressant. Alcohol is also a diuretic. So there are numerous effects on both the nervous system of the heart as well as the volume of blood in the circulatory system. And alcohol has the heart's not just an organ that exists by itself, it's connected to other organs. Alcohol can have a pretty significant effect on the nervous system connection to the heart, particularly the vagus nerve, which you may have heard of before. Vasovagal syncope is something that you may have heard of before. And interesting, it's not the alcohol itself that tends to kind of tip us over into rhythm problems, rather as the alcohol wears off. So that's why we see a lot of episodes the day or two after the actual holiday. People also make bad decisions or different decisions when they drink alcohol, increasing risk, of accidents and so forth and other stuff, aside from the effects on the heart rhythm.
I want to jump in there, Dr. K, and just a public service announcement for everyone. Drunk driving is at an all-time high around the holidays. So, just watch your drinking, watch your friends drinking or family, and then also, Uber is there, and no drinking and driving.
I want to talk about 2S. Now, diets change dramatically over the holiday season. It's part and parcel of celebrating at the end of the year. Large, high-calorie meals, particularly new meals that are higher in sugar and carbohydrates, can have an effect on the heart somewhat indirectly or forgetting to eat entirely. Sodium is a notorious contributor to heart rhythms. And we say, well, why is that? I have high blood pressure. I know I'm not supposed to eat sodium, but I can eat as much pepper as I want, for example. What's going on with sodium? And the answer is that the body maintains the concentration of stuff dissolved in the circulatory system very carefully. And if there's too much sodium or other particles, including glucose, including sugar from all those cookies and cakes, the body will cause you to hold on to water to make sure that the blood doesn't get too concentrated. That's why we get so thirsty after eating either a lot of sodium or sugar. And before you know it, the body's got too much fluid, we may dump it out, and subsequently we're going back and forth between overhydration and dehydration, which results in stress on the heart and some of the outcomes in addition to the atrial fibrillation. So just, it's all going to be about moderation, I think we'll conclude at the end of the day. Ashley, anything else you want to put in there?
No, you hit on it.
Okay. The less, I guess the more diffuse stresses or the more psychological stresses, which, as everybody knows, can very easily be transformed into physical symptoms. There's family stress that we don't experience during the year. Travel in a crowded airport with tight connections can be stressful. I'm kind of covered by the rest of those by these images here. Let me hold on. We have new demands on time. There can be financial strain. I saw some people responded to that. Getting knocked out of your routine can be difficult. And remember that a lot of people who may have had extensive family contacts earlier in their life are now in a condition or now in a state where that's not available because family members have died or moved or what have you, and that in itself can be a stressor. We may be less likely to seek medical care during the holidays because we're busy or because we think the clinic might be open or something is drawing us away to do something out. Now, all of these risk factors on this page can be individually contributors to developing symptoms of holiday heart, but it's really the combination of all of these that we should be aware of so we don't develop holiday heart. Okay, let's go on to the next one, I think.
Sorry,
All
one
right.
question in there, Dr. K.
Oh,
There's a lot of questions coming in. We'll try to
good.
our best to get to them. Just one question on this slide. Someone asked if having alcohol consumption over an entire day, so like approximately 3 drinks over 12 hours, is safer than all at once over a couple hours. Any thoughts on that?
Probably. The answer is probably. I have discovered that people are enormously variable in how their heart responds to drinking alcohol. Some people are really sensitive to it, and even half a glass of wine or less will reliably put them into AFib. Uh, Others are not. You know, they're clearly drinking too much, but AFib at least doesn't seem to be a problem for them yet. In general, I think spacing it out, not just with the alcohol, but with pretty much everything else, if you can spread it out, you'll lower your risk.
Awesome. And then I saw one question actually came in multiple times. Are there any recommendations for sleep position to prevent AFib?
That's a complicated question. Uh, uh, and it's a good question. The connection between AFib and sleep mostly has to do with sleep apnea. So lowering oxygen level is, again, another one of these physical stresses that is pretty clearly directed with the heart experiencing issues. If you don't have sleep apnea, I would say it probably doesn't matter too much. But a lot of people either have diagnosed sleep apnea or they're working on it, right? You know that they snore a lot, they kind of stop breathing. So sleep hygiene and then following up on things that you can do up to and including CPAP and all that is becoming more and more important as evidence that it does contribute to holiday heart. But the answer is it's going to be individual for each of us.
I'm sorry,
Amen, Dr. K.
one last question on caffeine. Can you just talk a little bit about caffeine?
Caffeine is a stimulant. That's why most of us like to drink coffee in the morning and wake up. And again, if you drink a lot of caffeine, you will probably be at higher risk. The other thing to keep in mind that we forget is that caffeine, like alcohol, is also a diuretic. So it doesn't take much to get yourself dehydrated, and then replacing it with more caffeinated beverage can be tricky. I'm going to tell just a brief anecdote to kind of give you a sense of the range of coffee that people drink. And most people will come and say, you know, I drink 1 or 2 cups in the morning. I'm worried that that's too much. And the answer is generally no. On the other end of the spectrum, when I was up in Seattle, I had a patient come in to say, and he wanted to know if drinking espresso was possibly causing him to have the heart palpitations. And I said, well, how much espresso do you drink? And he said, well, I'm at about 50 shots of espresso a day. So clearly the amount of, the answer is yes, that can affect your heart, by the way. Can you imagine drinking 50 shots? It's, again, very individual, but lower is generally better. We don't need to give it up completely.
Right. You do not want to see me on 50 shots of espresso. So we are ready to dive into our lifestyle tips and tricks. Again, this is the area I get really excited about. So first up is alcohol. Would it surprise you to learn that alcohol consumption goes up around the holidays? Shock. Awe. And there are people, I want to acknowledge first off too, that there are people on this call that will not have any alcoholic beverages this holiday season. So as in health coaching, we always say, take the information that resonates with you, leave the rest. Feel free to take some of this information and share it with others. So finding where you fit in that spectrum and your relationship with alcohol. So I do want to call attention to kind of something Dr. K was mentioning about atrial fibrillation and alcohol, that it's not when you're actually drinking the alcoholic beverages that you end up in AFib, but most of the studies that we researched for this were showing 12 to 36 hours after consumption. So when we looked at holiday heart and the most common days for heart attacks, that Monday really stuck out. And there is a range from Sunday to Tuesday. And that is usually due to Saturday night drinking. Really interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's right.
So tips, let me go through these real quick. Dr. K drove it home. Stay hydrated. A couple tricks here. Um, Subbing out alcoholic drinks for water or matching them. So if you have a glass of wine, you also have a glass of water. Guess what? That will help your teeth enamel as well. Same thing with coffee and water. So you have those side by side. It'll help from staining your teeth if that's important to you. Also, get creative. So mocktails. Like I said, I have a 1.5-year-old. So during my pregnancy, mocktails became my best friend, and I fell in love with non-alcoholic ginger beer. When we think of an alcoholic drink, it's usually in a festive setting. And we are looking for, I say, three things. We're looking at the color, we're looking at the bubbles, and then we're also looking at the garnish. You can easily replicate that with a healthy, low calorie and low sugar alternative. And then the last tip here, binge drinking. We mentioned that that's 5 drinks or more in one occasion. And again, that varies person to person, like Dr. K mentioned. Aiming to drink in moderation if you choose to do so. So females, that's 1 drink per day or less. Males, 2 drinks per day or less. And then a standard serving. This is really important. If we are making a drink at home, sometimes it's not a measured shot that's in our mixed drink, or it's not a traditional glass of wine. It is usually 1.5 to 2 times the amount of alcohol. So just being diligent and knowing who's making your drinks and the amount of alcohol in them. Anything to add there, Dr. K?
I don't think so. Let's keep going.
We have some good comments on this slide. So number one, Eugene wants to let everyone know that mocktails are very elegant, and I very much agree with that comment. So thank you, Eugene. There's a couple questions about like dehydration. So 2 questions. One, how can we tell if we're dehydrated? And 2, are supplements such as like liquid IV helpful to prevent AFib if you are drinking? And those are 2 separate questions, but can you maybe address those?
Yeah, I'd prefer that our group here not get to the point where they need to take IVs because they've used so much alcohol that they're starting to have palpitations, and if they've had AFib before that, they might be going back into AFib. That's not an ideal situation.
Liquid
Dehyd-
IV is actually like a powdered supplement,
what is it?
electrolyte supplement. It's a
Oh,
powdered electrolyte supplement.
oh,
Maybe like Gatorade, other things
yeah,
with
I'm sorry, I
electrolyte.
misunderstood that.
Fine.
It can't hurt. How do you know if if you're dehydrated? Your blood pressure may initially go down. You're probably not going to be measuring your blood pressure in the middle of the party. But if you're lightheaded when you stand up, or if you feel like you're going to faint, or if you've noticed that you've been urinating a lot, maybe not drinking as much fluid that uh, should produce that much, then those are clues that you can follow to try and make that determination, right?
And I want to add to that one, Dr. K, the P test. I know it's not glamorous, but you are aiming for a very pale yellow color. If your urine is dark yellow, that is usually a sign of dehydration. All right. Moving into diet. Would it also surprise you? Again, I'm going to say some obvious things to start and then we'll dive in, but weight gain around the holidays. Between Thanksgiving and New Year's, we are looking at around an average of just below a pound to 2 pounds of weight gain on average. And then would it surprise you that people can take in 6,000 calories worth of food and drinks? Drinks have calories as well. Uh, during on Christmas Day, and that's 3 times the recommended daily allowance for calories. So these things happen. You know, we indulge a little extra around the holidays, but what can we do about it? Lots of things. So my first one is probably my favorite tip, and that's bring your own healthy dish. I am always the person, if I'm coming to your dinner party, I will be bringing the veggie tray. And that is just because it helps me to balance out my plate. I know there's going to be mashed potatoes. I know there's going to be desserts. If I can put some carrots or some celery on that plate as well, it's going to help me to balance things out. When we talk about a heart healthy diet, we are looking for fiber. So think about fruits, vegetables, whole grains, all of these amazing things that are going to help our digestion, help us feel full, but also make our plate look really pretty with all those colors. As far as staying mindful, this is another great one. Slowing down, making your choices based on, how the food is going to make you feel. If you know you're lactose intolerant, maybe we stay away from the dairy. If we know that, for instance, in my house, we don't buy cookies and things, but when I go to parties, I'm looking for something homemade. It's going to be very, I feel like there's a little extra TLC sprinkled in there, and it's just going to taste better. So that's a treat for me. So slow down, think of maybe a smaller plate also. They usually have those big dinner plates, but then smaller side party plates or dessert plates. What would happen if we ate off one of those smaller plates and made multiple trips versus one big one? And then Dr. K, I know this is your favorite, out of sight, out of mind. So when those cookies, and this could be before the holiday party, this could be after, if those cookies are on the counter, guess what? Every time I walk through the kitchen, I'm grabbing one and eating one, whether I'm hungry or not. So storing those things in an opaque container or up on a shelf or in the cupboard is going to be really helpful to you and everyone else at your house. Any tips there, Dr. K?
Hide it from yourself. I mean, they sound silly, but whatever works, right?
It works. And the other thing I want to say about cookies, I know I'm getting hungry. The freezer's your friend. So another reason that we might overindulge during the holidays is we only get that food that one time of the year. Instead, did you know that a lot of foods are easily frozen? So I like to actually freeze up some meals altogether and then eat them through January, February, or March. I love leftovers. And cookies the same way. I will eat cookies all the way into March. But yeah, just having them in the freezer really slows things down. And then balance. Dr. K mentioned skipping meals, people with diabetes, uh, keeping your blood sugar steady throughout is going to be really helpful. And then remembering everything in moderation. This is the holidays. You've worked hard all year round. If you want to indulge in something, just make a mindful choice.
And point out too, pre-diabetes is a condition that we heard of where sugars are kind of chronically mildly elevated, but not quite to the point that one becomes a diabetic. And that is the time to act. You can discuss that with your regular physicians, but like everything, it's better not to have diabetes than to have diabetes. It's better not to have to go on a blood pressure pill if you don't have to, and so on and so forth. So, yeah.
Be proactive.
In the comments, and also in some of the questions, we got a lot of questions about like natural ways to help your heart. Can you talk maybe, Ashley, a little bit about what are some key elements in the heart healthy diet?
Yeah, so we talked about water, so that's hydration. We've talked about diet, a Mediterranean diet, lots of fruits, vegetables, fiber, like we talked about, whole grains and beans. Beans are a great addition as well. Basically, a lot of our plants. So you've got diet, you've got hydration, also activity. Put activity and sleep in there as well. So Dr. K mentioned the importance of making sure that if you do have sleep apnea, or you think you have sleep apnea, making sure that you get treatment for that and making sure you're sticking to your treatment. Same thing with your medications, taking your medications as prescribed, not skipping days or, splitting portions if your physician has not recommended that. Um, but thinking of instead of just one thing, a lot of people like to fixate on just diet or just exercise. Instead, how can we think of our health holistically? There's all these different pieces, and they may not all be perfect at the same time. That's okay. That's why we strive for progress, not perfection. All right. Our last big area was stress, team, and I just want to first say that we can't get rid of all of your stress. I wish Katie could just wave her magic wand and we would all be stress-free on a beach somewhere, right? But really, there's always going to be stress in our lives. So our big things here are how do we handle it? How do we manage it? And then how do we get rid of it where we can, cut it off where we can? Without letting it dictate, our reaction to it. So I just want to, maybe you can at home raise your hand, but this American Heart Association survey said that most folks who took the survey had stress had stress from the holidays at least 2 weeks after the holidays were done. If that's you, you can raise your hand just, in the room that you're in. And then the other one is thinking about maybe your last holiday. 71% of people said that their biggest regret was not slowing down. And if that was you, again, go ahead and raise your hand. Yeah, I see some hands coming up. That's great. Uh, so just these tips will all be how do we handle stress? How do we reduce it? And then how do we alleviate it? So starting off, boundaries. Thinking about how do we set parameters? If the holiday event is at our house, if it's at someone else's, we're around new people that we probably haven't been around a ton in the last year. The election happened. There's other health concerns. Maybe someone's put on some weight, or maybe someone is dealing with something else in their life. I think it's really important to set boundaries. What is able to be talked about, and what is off limits? What do we not discuss? Sending out, I think Dr. K, you mentioned sending out an email or just some communication to say, hey, we're not going to talk about politics this year. Something like that is really healthy to just set the expectations, set the boundaries. I also want to say taper expectations. So we come in with this Hallmark movie idea of what our dinner is going to look like and how everything's going to go. And then the turkey's burnt, the mashed potatoes, didn't get enough salt, and, somebody didn't show up that was supposed to. Instead, how can we just be curious? What is it going to be like? I wonder how so-and-so is going to react. I wonder if they're going to like my new pumpkin pie recipe. Instead, leave it open and just be interested. Maintaining your routine. Dr. K mentioned this in the stressors, is that, we talked about taking your medication as prescribed, daily exercise. Make sure you're prioritizing that in yourself, even with people visiting and traveling. One of the things I love is an after dinner walk. It's a great time to talk and chat with things maybe a little quieter, but also it's great for your body and the response your body has to exercise after a big meal. And lastly, presence is your present. So this is giving yourself and others empathy and grace. Make sure, just like Dr. K mentioned, there's a lot of people celebrating this holiday that it's different. And how can we embrace the change, but also how can we honor it? How can we share memories of those past? How can we support each other and just all over give that empathy and grace? And I think a big piece of that is tucking away the tech. So I'm putting that out there. If somebody, when we get to goal setting, if somebody wants to build a goal around where the cell phones are going to go at dinner time.
Ashley, one quick question for you here. A lot of people on this call are either dealing with a heart condition, are living with one, have a close family member who has one. And so the question is, how can we experience some joy when living with a heart condition? And especially because that can be kind of isolating for some people.
Ooh, that's a great question. I would say connection. I know loneliness kills. It can be so hard, and especially when we're not confident, when we have something like a heart condition that we feel could strike any time, it hurts our confidence. What happens when we have a support network is it builds our confidence. So, really laying the foundation of a relationship. If you are lonely, how can you text that extra person today or call somebody you haven't talked to in a bit? Maybe even just Facebook, like or comment something. Anything to start foundationally feeling like if something were wrong, you had someone to call. I think that's a really, really big piece. And ask other people how they're doing. That is a huge one. I feel like in today's society, we don't do that enough. So asking someone else how they are, usually that question will come back to you and you can start building that relationship. But
I have
connection.
told patients, over the years that these things that you just talked about are skills that you can actually practice and improve. For example, some people with palpitations, then they feel anxiety, and the anxiety makes the palpitations worse. And one can practice to separate those, and you may not be very good at it at first, but over time, many people are able to come to a point where they're not ignoring their cardiac conditions. They're well aware of them. They know they're there, but they're able to separate them and kind of set them off to the side and carry on with a more normal life using some of these techniques that you've described, or simply practicing it themselves and get better control of the whole situation and get better and better at it. Some people are really good at it, and it takes a little time, but I'd encourage you to try if you're struggling with that.
Know yourself. Yes, Dr. K.
I know we're kind of tight on time, but hopefully quick question for you, Dr. K. Someone asked in the comments, when you feel a contraction in your chest from stress, is that bad for your heart?
Well, it's prefer that you not, it depends, what you mean by contraction. First off, many people will have palpitations as a result of any of the stressors that we just discussed, which can run the gamut from being regular, strong pounding in the regular rhythm to skips like PVCs or PACs, which can feel like a pressure, to atrial fibrillation, to a more long-lasting discomfort that might represent a blockage, or it might simply represent that you've eaten too much and your esophagus is struggling with reflux and causing some, spasms. So the goal is not to get there. We're going to talk a little bit more about the symptoms in the next slide here, I think.
You got it, Dr. K. So we know what holiday heart is, and we know lifestyle tips and tricks on how to hopefully avoid a trip to the ER this holiday season. But these things happen. Dr. K, walk us through what kind of symptoms are we looking for? What should we watch out for?
Holiday heart symptoms runs the gamut from maybe being slightly lightheaded because you stood up too fast or you had one skip in your heart rhythm, to some pretty serious complications. The most serious are heart attack, blockage in the coronary artery, which can be precipitated, by a number of things. We don't go into too much detail, but we're mostly interested in you recognizing symptoms. New onset, prolonged chest discomfort, prolonged lightheadedness or nausea, radiation of the discomfort to the neck and arm. Everyone's heard of these symptoms of heart attack. Shortness of breath, passing out. If these are new, then they need to be evaluated, because if there is a blockage in the coronary artery that has developed it, the sooner we can get it open, the better that you will do long term. And this is a situation probably to call an ambulance, and get in. The second major condition that can arise during holiday heart is something equally as severe as a heart attack, and that's a stroke. Symptoms of stroke are face drooping, weakness, speech difficulty, difficulty walking, evidence that the patient's not understanding what you're saying to them. These are indications of problems in the brain, whether they're blood clots that have actually started in the heart, which in turn were caused by atrial fibrillation and broke off and went to the brain, or whether they were clots or even bleeding that just occurred in the brain as a result of high blood pressure, or simply the result of a blood clot forming in a diseased artery in the head. They need to be treated quickly. And the faster we can treat stroke, the better our patients will do long term. Now, our goal, of course, is to enjoy the holidays and not have any of this stuff happen, particularly the last two here, but it's always better to be knowledgeable and empowered about knowing them than not know about them and then make the stress even worse by panicking and not knowing what to do. So keep an eye out for them, but enjoy yourselves.
Exactly. And you mentioned people traveling. We put the AED symbol here.
Oh, yeah.
So in case you are traveling, you can look for that sign. Accessing an AED can help someone in cardiac arrest. You can actually save a life. Same thing with hands-only CPR, and we
Yeah.
will send that link out in our resources.
If I expect most of our listeners have probably not done CPR or placed a defibrillator and put a shock on someone's chest, and it can be terribly intimidating, but you can do it. Get in the habit of looking where these things are in the airport or in the mall and be ready. You can do it. And you really can help someone, whether it's someone you know or an unfortunate passerby you happen to come across.
All right. So, team, get your pen and paper ready. This is where we take action. So, we talked about what holiday heart is. We talked about how we can avoid it. And now I want you to commit to something. So this is where we set a goal. I put a few ideas here to help get your brain thinking. So I'll give you a second to read those. But I want you to think of an area that you'd like to improve upon this holiday season. And let's dive in. So in health coaching, we say SMART. Be smart. Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based for your goal. So we picked our biggest holiday heart challenge area. I'm going to say that mine is the mashed potatoes. I always eat too many mashed potatoes and then I feel ill. So my targeted behavior is going to be to eat, to portion control my mashed potatoes. Now I'm going to build an I will statement. So I will use a smaller plate. That's going to be my trick to eating less mashed potatoes. I will use a smaller plate at every holiday dinner that I go to. I'm going to post that somewhere. I'm going to tell my partner about it and say, hey, Kevin, make sure that you don't see me with a big plate because I'm going to indulge. I don't want to overindulge. Remember, it takes about 30 minutes for your body to tell you that you are full. So the slower you can eat, the better. So those portions and those multiple trips really do help. I am excited to hear what everyone out there comes up with. Katie or Dr. K, do you have an idea of what your I will statement will be?
I will try to not eat big meals either, and particularly the sugar.
Okay.
Everybody knows that sugar is probably not great for you, and it's true. Even if you're not diabetic, you don't want to come pre-diabetic, and big increases in blood glucose can cause big changes in circulatory volume. So that's what I'm going to try and work on. I think I'm okay with the other stuff, but that's going to be difficult for me.
Okay, I'll check in with you, Dr. K. I'll be your accountability buddy.
No, great. Thank you.
All right. We have made it to Q&A. We had so many great questions throughout, Katie, but I will hand it over to you. Thank you again, Dr. K, and we're excited to hear how you liked the webinar and hear your questions.